the Real Talk podcast. I am Shane Girdlestone, and I have my co-host here, George Wilson. We're here to talk about real shit, taboo shit, the controversial shit, anything that you might want to know the questions about or think that you have been told the truth but maybe not have. Just ready to dive deep into those subjects and talk about your questions and answers and those different types of subjects. Before we get into it, it's going to be an interesting one. This one, it's actually about me. We're interviewing me about my recent choices. First off, let's have a chat with the body architect, George, mate. What have you been doing with yourself, buddy?
Just trying to get through the days, mate. For me, I'm back in a 2,000 calorie deficit, like literally straight off the back, 2,000 drop, and it wasn't really for body fat composition or anything like that. It was just because my appetite hit a wall, and I thought at first I was like, oh, this is a real blessing. But as the kind of like the days have gone past, my appetite's not come back yet, but diet fatigue has set in. So I'm now at like a loose end. I'm not really hungry. I don't really want to eat, but I still feel like shit. So it's just yeah, it's not really working to do what I thought it would. But of course, it's a delayed response. It's going to eventually pick back up. I've got 4 to 6 weeks of this now. But yeah, kind of rightly timed. I've got that little bit of like stimulation in the morning, jumping up, taking my lipolytics and stuff. So with the comp window now coming in, probably the right time for me to be a bit overstimmed and not sleeping so much.
I think that was on the back end because you have been quite sick a few times over the past couple of months.
Mate, since I come back from Turkey, we went on a little holiday post my prep, and I come back with neurovirus, and from there it was just like a delayed response. And my immune system must have hit the floor so hard. I think I dropped to like 7 or 8 kilos in 3 days when I had it. What? So from there, every time I've got ill since, it's like hit me for 6 and laid me up in bed. Even like benign things like colds and flus and stuff that I'd normally just work through, absolutely wiped me out. It was, yeah, I'm still waiting on that response. Every time Zoe comes back, like, oh, caught a cold or anything, I'm like, wait.
And mate, when you're a competitive bodybuilder, if you lose 2 kilos, you're about to start crying. If you're losing 7 kilos, shit.
I was looking at myself in the mirror, hardly standing up, thinking, where the fuck have I gone? Like, it's 3 days. I now look like I don't lift. What the hell has happened? Yeah, it was just that. It was just the dehydration, man. I couldn't believe it. It was the first time I've had to go into hospital and have electrolytes pumped into me because I was that bad. So, yeah,
shit.
Jumping out of that into a growth phase probably not the best idea, but hey.
Fatigue, that stresses through the roof.
I would say, how's things with you, Shane? But that is the kind of topic of this entire episode, man. So, yeah, well, I'll let you lead the way on this one.
Easy. So we are putting this podcast up out of sync. So I feel the podcast is going to be still talking about my comp prep and leading up to the IFBB state shows and the Grand Prix up into Spain as well. But this one's going to be about your why, and specifically it's going to talk about my why. So I have pulled out of competing, not jumping on stage. We're 4 weeks out when we made that decision. Now, when I made that decision, it wasn't something I'd done just off the back end of a bad day, because we all know when we go through a comp prep, we have our ups and downs. Fatigue is high, stress is high, sleep's minimal, food's minimal. You're going through all those different stresses. There's some days you just got to say, fuck it, I'm out, I'm done. But yeah, this is my first time pulling out of a show, being 5 years competitive. And to give you guys a bit of knowledge, so my first show with my coach back then, I took out the novice, and then I came second in the category under 85 kilos back then. I think I was 81 on the day. I was tiny. But even in that, like the way that coach, the way he done his deficit was that he'd deplete you of carbohydrates from 10 weeks out. It was absolutely brutal. And being a first-time competitor too, like thinking that if this is what we're going to do every time, I can't do this. But I pushed through still, and plenty of fights at home and some crazy moments and things like that, but pushed through it. And got a stage like I got a couple of trophies, and I was quite proud of that. Then into took a year growing, coming to the next show, and that one was a very interesting one, with the ups and downs with that one. So I actually bit off about a third of my tongue when I was about 12 weeks out. And that was, again, I talk about ego lifting. I was doing a squat, and as I came out, I had chewing gum in my mouth at the same time, and I bounced as I came up, and I've done that. I chewed, I came down on my tongue as the weight came down as well, and just bit a big chunk of tongue out, like literally this bit of flesh I spat out on the ground. It was, and then all my food for about 3 weeks after that was all blended, drinking through a straw. It was, and chewing food, pushing up to the side of my mouth and eating that way. Um, and then other stresses between moving through that. Then coming into the next show, now that one was a doozy. That one, if anyone was going to pull out of a show, it should have been that one. So just after Christmas, 2020, 2020, so 19th January 2020, we had a house fire. I was actually out as a family doing my cardio, and I get this random phone call, and it was a senior sergeant saying, "Is this Shane Girdlestone?" I said, "Yep." Well, then they said, "Look, don't panic. You've had a small house fire. We're making sure you're not in the house. Are you able to come home?" And we come home, and it was not a small house fire. There was.
I was gonna say, I wasn't, obviously we weren't working together at that time, Shane, but I saw your stories a couple. I think it was on the anniversary of it.
Yep.
That you saying that's a small fire. I would hate to see what a big fire looks like to them. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, mate. There was the emergency response team was there. 2 fire trucks were there. Police had cordoned off 3 of the streets. Ambos were there. The entire top level was taken out. Then obviously from all the shit coming down into the bottom level was taken out. But we lost everything. We actually walked out. We actually had some clothes in the back of our car that we were about to take to St. Vincent's here to give away and donate. So we literally that's all we had. We literally lost everything. And then we had to go into emergency accommodation. And then as that happened, I got a real bad flu too, and I was sick for about 9-10 days. But I bought like these plastic containers. I was prepping my meals still in a microwave in this shitty hotel. And then we got put up in this 2-bedroom apartment. And then COVID hit as well. So here we are, 4 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment in the middle of summer with no air conditioning, sweating our balls off, and I'm still trying to train and prep for a show. So out of all the comps, that one should have been the one I should have pulled out of. My last comp was actually just before we started working together. George was actually quite good and quite cruisy, to be honest, when I was being coached on the Logan Robson. But for me, it's always been, why I got on stage at the start. When I started my bodybuilding career, I loved the physique development, on how far I could push the body, how I could develop my body and grow my body and see what I could bring to the stage. And I always had in that mindset in the back, like, I want to win a pro card one day, I'll get pro status. That'd be a huge achievement. And I always wanted to compete overseas and become, an international, as I do inverted commas here for those who aren't watching, an international competitor. And then coming to this one, we've done between myself and George, we've done a long, relatively long growth season, put on a fair bit of size. And it was around Christmas we bought this house we're living in now. And I started questioning my why then. So why am I doing this? Why am I getting on stage? And I just really started to ask, what's the point? And when we moved in here, like typically whenever we've moved into a house, there's that tradition of moving into a house. First night, you're eating on the floor, eating pizza. All right. I didn't do that this time. And it's typically maybe a drink with the wife or something like that. And I started questioning then. And then again, Christmas comes around, which, you gave me a few days off over Christmas to relax a bit, which was fine. But again, I was just questioning, I'm like, I'm turning 40 soon. I've got 2 young men that I'm raising as well, so 2 boys, and I was missing out on that again, and it just sort of started to trigger that thought process even further on why. And then it really came around to my birthday when I turned 40. Again, we had plenty of friends come around. I've always made the point too, but I say friends came around, and I've had some other outings as well. I've made the point that when I do a comp prep, I try not to restrict myself and not do things. I went to the drags a while ago, and then we all went out to Brazilian barbecue a while ago where I didn't eat. I just went there for the social aspect of it, which was quite nice and fine. I can control myself when I do those sort of things. I know a lot of people can't do that in that environment. But then, hitting my birthday and all my friends around, and 40 being a rather big one, especially after the past 10 years that my family's been through, between losing our company and the house and having to restart our lives. We've had to restart our lives twice in a decade. was really the tipping point for me. But I still didn't make that decision then of saying, "Nah, I'm out. I'm done."
Yeah.
And then just sort of kept on playing on my mind, and then it just came to that process where I just said there is no point for me getting on stage. It started to damage my business in a sense, because you get into that point where, I'm doing check-ins with clients, and I've got half a page of notes on one side, so that when it comes to their check-in next week, I've got everything. I'm always making notes, but these notes get longer and longer and longer, just so I'm not missing that stuff. Because at the same time, they're paying me for a service, and I'll make sure they're still going to get that same service, no matter how fatigued and how fucked up my brain is.
Yeah.
And it just, so I talked to my wife about it, and she was adamant. She's like, "Nah, you're still competing. You're not pulling out. You never have yet. You're not going to do it. I'm not going to allow you to." Her exact words were, "I'm not going to let you."
Yeah.
And I just said, I'm done. I just don't see why. And that was really the point of it. That's when I sent a text to you and said, "Look, mate, you're free for a catch up. I'm pulling out."
I mean, the thing with it all, Shane, looking at like the adversity you kind of face through past comp preps, we know that this isn't a case of not being able to get the job done. It's a case of whether you want to now. Like, you've had that internal fire, you've had that drive to compete through all kinds of adversity, and your why was strong enough that in the past, it didn't matter what life threw at you. Didn't matter. Bump it off, crack on. The goal is more important. That selfish intrinsic value we've got to step on stage and achieve that goal for us is of a higher priority than the other things around us. And of course, going through life, priorities change. Your what you can give that energy to within your day-to-day battery life, it starts to deteriorate. And obviously, you've got a hell of a lot going on, Shane, within working, coaching, family life, additional things that, of course, as you get older, become a lot more valuable to us and offer us more of a reward than perhaps our younger, more selfish goals.
Yep.
And at some point, that's a natural transition that everyone's kind of got to, well, not necessarily got to go through. Some people don't, but most people will kind of cross this at some point in their life where priorities change, things shift, and you have to be quite honest with yourself, which I think is quite nice. Again, hearing the transition, it wasn't just a case of you woke up at Christmas that day after it and thought, no, I'm not doing this anymore. You gave it time to keep digging in. You didn't just pull out just because of one bad day. And again, remembering, like on comp prep, we are going to have more bad days than good towards the back end. And there is always times where you sit there, you look at yourself in the morning after sleeping for an hour that night, heavy as fuck, can't move your feet. You look at yourself in the mirror and think, why am I doing this? I'm literally killing myself. But for some reason, that external thing at the end, that goal that we're trying to achieve, just makes it worth it at the time. And if you drop that why off, if that internal fire that is telling you to do something drops off, you're fighting and losing battle trying to elongate that window. You're just going to stress yourself out even more. You're going to worry about it, trying to please almost like other people around you. Again, like your wife's expectations, you stepping on stage. The kids were looking forward to seeing you step on stage, like we said. Obviously, you have a coach who's coaching you that, just spent all this time working together to achieve something. There's like this certain like responsibility you feel for people outside of you and externally. And it's important to remember, like I said to you straight away from a coach's perspective, Shane, like at the end of the day, as much as it would be great to put you on stage and finish the job off, it's my job to make sure that you are happy, content, and going in the direction you want to go in with your goals. So if the goal changes, that doesn't mean that we now, it all just crumbles and it all falls apart. We now just reassess, change the direction, and keep pushing forward to them goals, whichever direction they go. So there's never like a personal thing, and there shouldn't ever be a personal thing between a coach and a client should a client make that decision, because it's not my decision to make. That's entirely onto you. It's my job to help you make sure you're correct in your decision, and that 2 weeks down the line, you're not going to regret or try and jump back in, because of course, by that point, we've already made changes and wasted 2 weeks. But so long as you're completely solidified in your decision, and I can see that it's a true reflection of where you are, and it wasn't just because you was having a bad day, there should be no regression or fight back from that decision. It should just be quite a mutual thing between coach and client to understand this is the best thing for you. There's something else you didn't quite touch on as well, Shane, with the PTSD, which is something that I think we should address as well. There's a lot more adversities than just external stuff. You also got your own internal stuff that you also battle that most people don't, which is another hurdle for us to have what we've been trying to get over and work around.
Yeah. Look, I do suffer from PTSD from the military. It's something that was only diagnosed probably about a year ago now. I've had anxiety in that for quite some time, but when we started diving deep more into that, it was PTSD, and I have been battling with Department of Veteran Affairs for quite some time around my discharge out of the military, and we've been going through that process, and that's also coming to a head as well. So there's those stress factors that have also been, accumulating in the background as well. Um, it's funny because like the why has changed, and getting on stage doesn't suit my goals. And there's also two people that have been resonating big in my brain over these past couple of months as well. Is one, again, Logan Robson. Me and him had a chat when we caught up in the gym probably about 6 months ago, and we'll talk about his pro card, when's he going to do his pro debut, blah blah blah. And we got to the discussion. I said, and I asked him, have you found that getting your pro status, does that benefit your business? And he said, not at all. Hasn't changed anything for his business. And then when we recently, which we haven't launched this episode yet, we recently interviewed Cam George, who won the pro card, won the Australian title at last season. And while he isn't a comp prep coach yet, there was that, he said that there's that expectation of now that he's won the pro card, there's that expectation that he has to go further.
Mm-hmm.
So both of those aspects have sort of been playing on my mind too, that, I think in Australia, winning a pro card doesn't do shit for your business. Doesn't do anything. But then once you win it, and Logan's exactly the same. People are like, oh, when are you going to compete again? When are you doing your debut? Why aren't you competing again? Like why do you have to?
Mm-hmm.
Like I've come second in Australia for the under 90s, and I'm quite content with that. Don't get me wrong, to win a show and have that ticket, it would be great. But as soon as you go out in the wind, that ticket blows off. Like no one really gives a shit. And 2 years later, no one's going to remember you.
Mm-hmm. Damn straight.
Right. So I think with where I want to go, like business wise and growing the business, it's got nothing to do with me getting on stage.
Yeah.
Besides from going through the process and learning from experience, which I've done it many times before, there's not much more I can learn on the mental side, that mental aspect, and the physical aspect and the fatigue aspect of actually going through it. There's not much more I can learn because I've done it and been there and been through it.
Yeah, exactly, man. And I think for the listeners listening in here, this is something that we address. Like Shane's situation and where he is now making this decision is very different to perhaps some of you younger guys or girls that are watching and listening, right? Shane's been through the ropes. He's been there. He's done this multiple times and proven that he's got what it takes to step on stage and actually do this thing that people look at bodybuilding as being quite fashionable now. And like, it's this really cool thing, and our industry's growing, which is great. But there's so many people being drawn to it, which is, again, fantastic. I'm not knocking it, but there's a lot of people that are realizing how hard bodybuilding actually is and what it takes to actually get in stage condition. Not everyone has the willpower to do so. So when you're listening to this and you're thinking, hearing Shane pull out from a comp, he's had all these, past experiences and stuff. You as a first timer, perhaps listening to this, suddenly kind of having these same thoughts. Remember that the stage is not going to go anywhere. This is what I said to Shane as well. The minute he said he was pulling out, that stage ain't going nowhere. So that bodybuilding is going to live on far past when we're gone. So that stage isn't going anywhere. There's always going to be another opportunity should you wish to or want to step on stage. That's never going away anywhere. So if you're young and the timing is not quite right now for you, remembering that life stuff is going to get in the way. All the way through your competitive career, there's going to be times where perhaps you want to start prepping, you want to prep, but health gets in the way, life throws a curveball that skews it. It doesn't mean bodybuilding's done for good. There is always that next time when you could step on stage. I've said to you just before the pod, Shane, there's 2 comps I pulled out of, one for a family reason and one for health concerns. It didn't stop me chasing it. It didn't stop me switching that fire back on and going again. So if you are in this position that, you've had to pull from a comp and you're quite younger, you're not like in Shane's cap, don't sit there and stress that this is bodybuilding done now and that you maybe don't have what it takes. It's just a case of reassessing the hens in the coop, getting them all back in line and progressing forwards from there.
Yeah, I think, I never say never. 4 years time, I say, hey, George, let's flip the switch and let's do masters and do opens. Who knows, right? There's bodybuilders out there that are still doing this at 50, 55, even up in the pro ranks. But I've also had to reevaluate my own physique, and that at the end of the day, I don't see myself currently as a pro contender.
And that this is something that we've not touched on with people, and that's being realistic.
Like, you've got to think like this takes a lot of time, and even to grow. I've had some young fellas come to me before. He goes, "Yeah, I want to get a pro card. I want to go pro." All right, sweet. But okay, it's not about a 26 week or 28 week or a 20 week prep to get your pro card. You've got to look at the off season. You're ticking those boxes day in, day out for years. All right. And even to put on the size, the symmetry, and then bring the conditioning comes with experience and time. If we look at the Lyle McDonald, what's his, it's his, I think it's muscle growth or muscle, can't remember the chart, but he talks about, he goes about, first time bodybuilders, and talk about males specifically, first time bodybuilders, then you got intermediate, then advanced bodybuilders, on how much actual muscle mass you can build throughout a time period. And if we look at, like, even if we look at the advanced lifters, like the amount of muscle growth that you can actually generate naturally in a month period is 125 grams.
And that's if you're lucky.
And that's if you're lucky. And that's, if you're talking about someone, let's say someone's 5'11" and 125 grams a month, you do that over a year, like you're only looking at what 1.375 kilos in a year potentially of muscle mass.
Yeah.
Right, naturally. So this is again, these people come here and think, oh, I want to start competing 2 years later, I want to have a pro card. No, this takes a lot of time. You look at the pro guys who have been doing it for 10 years and haven't got a pro card yet, but you look at the muscle mass they've accumulated over a 10-year period. Well, it looks huge. It's actually only probably been between the 6, 7, 8 kilo mark.
Yeah.
So
this is the thing. Genetics. It's genetics, man. As much as I hate to play that card because people talk about it so much nowadays, but genetics really does define that. You can have the hardest work or the best, work mentality on planet Earth, and you can have all the right mindsets and approach and the best coach and the best setup. But realistically, what defines those top tier, we're talking like the top 10% in the world, Olympians, what defines them? They have everything that we need to progress forwards in terms of the external variables, motivation, drive, willpower, they've got it all. But the thing that they have that sets them apart from everyone else is they've got all of that, plus the genetic pool that they was gifted just from their mum and dads to be this big, to grow to this size. There are people out there that are amateurs that are training probably harder, more better, more acutely, more perfectly than any other pro out there or any Olympian. But they don't look the same. And there's a big factor here that we don't like to play the genetics card because it is a bit of a cap. Like people go, oh, well, I can't get it because of my genetics. It's somewhat true. It's somewhat not. There are plenty of good pros out there that maybe don't have the perfect genetic structure, but have worked their ass off to get there. But it's realistic on where you are, your potential to grow, the realistic look at your structure, your insertion points. Do you have that potential? You can outwork genetics. You can to some extent. So that doesn't mean just because you don't have the genetics, you need to stop bothering with bodybuilding. It's a waste of your time. But be realistic that it might not take you 2 years like this absolute genetic freak over here that sniffed a dumbbell and turned into a pro. It's probably going to take you 10, 15 years to develop a fucking physique that's pro worthy. Yep. So when kids come to me and they go, I want to get a pro card in 2 years. And you look at them and you go, well, the people that do that naturally look close to pro worthy anyway.
Yeah.
Like I've been training 11 years now. So I started when I was 14. I'm now 25. Naturally, my physique looked shit. And I happily stand there and say that I had no legs. I was very scrawny, drawn in, 6 foot tall, really, really skinny. I had no natural kind of shape, size, or muscularity. It's something that I've had to work on to build. Now, in my early years, I was the same as every other kid. I started bodybuilding. I was like, yeah, I'm going to get my pro card. It's going to be really good for business. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to take over the world. Everyone has that mentality when they're younger. It's not until you do your first off season and you actually look at how much muscle you can put on, whether enhanced or natural. When you see that reflection, it's a big pin drop moment where you sit there and go, okay, realistically, it's probably going to take me 10, 15 years of repeatedly doing this to get the size I need. Yeah. That's when you need to look at yourself and go, do I have 10, 15 years of my life to give to this? Can I eat my meals every day, day out, day in, day out, be strict, restrict myself from certain social situations? You can still go and be present, but you're going to have to take your meals with you. You can't be completely 100% in the moment with these people. You've always got to be the bodybuilder in the situation. Can you do that for 10, 15 years? Some people can. And I believe that it's something to do with how their brains are wired, that's how they think, that's how they focus, that the routine is the key pinnacle for them getting through the day without falling apart. Those people more than likely could probably put up with it. But for most normal human beings, 10 to 15 years to sacrifice for something that may or may not happen, it's a bit of a risk.
That's it. You got to be realistic, and that's where I'm being realistic at the moment too. The same thing. I've had a moment of reflection, of looking where we're going, and family is most important to me. you know, and as a family man, married with 2 kids, you know, it's a very big sacrifice for them as well.
Yes.
Right. Like at parts of my comp prep, they will go out and hide food from me. Like they'll go out, and when I say hide food, like they'll go out and do something and I won't go.
Yeah.
All right. Or my wife won't get that bit of cake or something or whatever. Or my kids won't do something. Or they'll my kids, for example, right now, because I'm such a feeder when I'm comp prepping as well. Right. Like I'll give them a piece of cake. I'm like, oh, how's that taste? And they're like, oh, it's terrible, Dad. It's terrible. I'm like, don't bullshit me. Just tell me. I need to know. You know, so it's a big sacrifice for them too. So it's while people think that, you know, this is very much a lonely sport, which it can be, but when you're a family guy, married guy, partner, whatever, it is a team sport.
It always
is. You know, so I've had that moment of realization, like they're important to me. We've got to start enjoying life together.
Yes.
And I need to concentrate and focus more on my business and moving forward that way. And I think if there's anyone out there that you know that they want to do a show, just they've got to be a bit realistic and think about it, and think about the sacrifices you're going to have to make.
Yeah, completely, man, completely. I think the thing with bodybuilding, like, yes, to some extent it is a selfish sport, but maybe when you first start out, maybe when you're 17, 18, early 20s trying to get into it, you're still single, it's a very selfish sport, and you can afford to give that time to it when you're just a solo unit. But when you start looking into like the later years, late 20s, 30s, most people will eventually have someone, like a significant other, or some people have families, some people have other people that depend on you and rely on you. And these people are, as much as we should always put ourselves first, when you have a family, when you've got kids, they're always above you on the pecking order. It doesn't matter what everything you do in life, you're going to prioritize and put them first. And bodybuilding doesn't often allow for that to happen at certain times, especially on prep. Yep. So for some people that will sit there and say, oh, I've had a family and I've got to the Olympia or whatever, that's great. But you've got people around you who undoubtedly will, they can't quite see that thneed people are giving to them more so than they're giving back to the family. But that's okay in their dynamic. For most people, most human beings wouldn't put up with that long term.
No.
You need that 50-50 in any relationship, whether it's a relationship with your wife or a relationship with your friend or a relationship with the kids. It's give and take with everything.
Now, I know so many bodybuilders that had a girlfriend or significant other or something like that, and throughout comp prep, but because there's that other person who's not even competing had to give back so much more than what they can give back to them.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, but we don't see it like that at the time because we're so depleted, we're so fatigued that we can't look outside of the 50 gram of rice we've got in front of us starving. We can't take it.
You've got the blinkers on. This is what you're doing, and whatever's happening out there is just
don't care. Yeah. As much as it's horrible to say it, you don't. And there's times when you look at it and it makes you feel bad sometimes because you don't. But it is the truth of it. There are times when you're going to feel like that.
And that's where another thing I'm starting to feel very selfish.
Yeah.
Because this is also the other factor of it is also the financial factor of it as well. So it's very expensive. Like just to fly over to Spain and do the comp, like even though we're going to do a bit of a holiday at the same time, the flights from my wife and I return was over $5,000. Yeah. So it was like $2,800 each return.
Wait, I'm still trying to think of that in English. Sorry, I just heard that in Oz, and my English brain just read that in English. It's about $2,500 English. I think I just paid my flights for Oz, and it was $1,400 return English. So about 283 Oz.
Per person or for you and Zoe?
Oh no! Just for me. Yeah, sorry, I just forgot that. Yeah, no, ignore me. Yeah, there's 2 people, not 1.
Yeah.
It is expensive, man.
I look at the financial. That's what I said. I started feeling real selfish about it too. There's things I want to be doing to the house here. There's little upgrades I want to do. But at the same time, I'm saying, hey, I need X amount of money just to get into prep. Then I need X amount of money for this as well. It becomes very, very selfish.
You're gonna have to start drawing back, like you said, things around the house that need done that your wife, kids, all that it's going to benefit them having stuff done in the house. You're thinking about not putting that money there and having it for competing again. So back into that selfish nature of comp prep, and it's it's not that this is a negative sport, and it's not that, you know, we're sitting here saying that it's really, really selfish and that we're all kind of horrible narcissistic people, because we're not. But there is just certain times in the bodybuilding timeline where you have to, like, the off season is where we always say, like, we try and give back to those people around us that put up with us on prep, right? There's times where you just can't physically give that energy because you don't have it to give to everyone else around you.
Yeah.
And if you have a family around you, like Shane, your guys are absolutely fantastic. They've been with you through all your preps. Like, they understand what's going on. They're really supportive of that, which is great. But not everyone's going to understand.
No.
And not every human being is going to get it. Most human beings still look at us in the bodybuilding industry and think we're absolutely clapped for starving ourselves.
Oh, man, I hear it every week. Oh, I don't know how you do it. I don't know why you do it. And I say, well, you don't have to.
Exactly. You know, it's a personal choice, but you've got to have that support network around you, and it's got to have all the life, all the other factors of the allostatic load, all the other stresses that are going on around you. They need to be somewhat in line with where you're heading, or it is always going to fall short. You're going to be met with so much resilience, and there's only so much time before each hurdle you get over becomes a bit bigger, and it's a bit harder to climb over, and it is eventually going to hit you with a brick wall.
Yeah. Well, I think what I want our listeners and watchers to really take on board for this one is to really think about it and know your why. So why you're doing this. And I'd like to think, solid about it. I don't want you thinking that, I've had some girls, they want to do a contest prep that's going to make them diet and make them get into a body composition they want. But at the end of the day, that is almost an eating disorder in itself, because bodybuilding is a type of eating disorder and it's not healthy. But think about your why. Think about why you're doing it, and make sure that it's going to align with your goals. And if your goal is that you want to get on stage once, well, go for
it. You just raised a good point there in the eating disorder to bodybuilding comparison. Now, directly, I think quite not exactly the same for the pedantic listeners that are going to go, oh, well, it's really negative. It causes things like that. I think bodybuilding is very attractive to people that already have eating disorders, anorexia or binge tendencies. Like, it's very attractive to them. But also, bodybuilding can create these tendencies as you become more neurotic and so fixated on the numbers and being perfect. You can end up becoming someone who permanently overfeeds or underfeeds for chronic windows of time. And essentially, that's what prep is in of itself. It's chronically low eating to suffice the look, which is very similar to kind of what anorexic people do. Just they're not doing it to suffice a look. It's a very different thing that's going on in their head that gets leading them to it. But they're very similar in what they actually do. So there is always like a little bit of, not danger, because danger is the wrong word, but a little bit be apprehensive around just jumping into bodybuilding, especially if you're not someone who's solidified in eating behaviors or have a good relationship with themselves. If you go into this thinking bodybuilding is going to fix your relationship with yourself, you're going to be quite painstakingly mistaken there. It's probably going to make these things a little bit worse.
it. If you make them worse, it's going to be a hard learning curve.
Yeah. So again, like you said there, Shane, having a good think about your why is important. And in all honesty, you're probably not going to know it within the first year of bodybuilding.
No.
I don't think you can have an idea of why you think you're doing something, but I think the time and experience that going at it and trying it is going to teach you is going to help you to formulate that why into something that's either going to last long term, or it's going to formulate into maybe this isn't for me. But give it some time, give it some experience, build some experience of going through what you need to do, and let the why develop as you go. But try and have a good idea of why you think the why is at the beginning.
Yeah, I think the other takeaway I want people to take is that be realistic with yourself on what you want to achieve and how you're going to achieve it, and be ready for change. I wasn't willing to accept this, and it took me quite some time to make this decision. But then I had to move the punches. I had to make that decision, and it came to that point. I'm still happy on how far I went through the contest prep. But yeah, just be willing to make change, whether it be for the good or the bad.
Yeah, completely straight, man. And if you are thinking or having second thoughts about competing, take a note on how long it took Shane to get to that decision from Christmas to now, where he was thinking about it, questioning it, making sure it wasn't just having a bad day. So, think thoroughly about your decisions before you make them, because once you pull from the prep, you kind of can't revisit it 2 weeks later if you change your mind. Like, once you've pulled, you've changed things, you've changed the structure, you've lost timeline there to get in condition. So make sure you're affirmative with your decision, and if you're not, hold it out for a few weeks longer just to fully be 100%, and then you'll know your decision.
I can tell you the exact day that I started thinking about it was the 22nd of December. It was the day we moved into this house.
Yeah.
I've done like 37,000 steps that day and I only eaten one meal. And I was like,
Yeah.
fuck. And, my brain started going overdrive. That's when I started thinking about it. So guys, that's me. That's what we're doing. I'm never saying never. Who knows what happens one day? My son, he's one of my clients essentially. He wants to get on stage one day, and I'm happy to embrace that. So I have promised that if he gets on stage too, I will jump on stage with him too.
Oh, mate, that'd be epic.
That'd be unreal. That'd be unreal. So he wants to do.
If he does end up deciding to want to do it, you never know what will happen as he gets older. But if he does, what a cool way to kind of guide him through that first prep. Like you're in there with him, you know what he's feeling like. At the same time, you can help coach him through them decisions as he goes through. Man, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So I've made that promise with him, so that I will be on stage one day if he wants to go on stage.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
I guarantee that. In the meantime, I'm still doing what I do. I still prep my meals. I still track. I still get my steps up. I am having a relaxed week this week, but when I say relaxed week, I'm still hitting 17,000 steps a day. I think I've had one day this week. It's been 9,000 steps. That's got to force myself to stay on the couch. I cannot stop this, and I think it's something that Arnold Schwarzenegger says that going to the gym, and this is inbuilt in him. When he gets in the morning, he eats breakfast. When he's tired, he goes to bed. It's just that's part of his nature. And I've been doing, like I said, I've been going to the gym since I was 19. So for over 21 years, I've been going to the gym. Competitive for 5 years, but really working on bodybuilding for the last 8. It's inbuilt in me, so I won't stop. And I've still got plans to improve my physique because I still love doing it. I still love bodybuilding. It's just a stage. I don't see that as part of my goals.
I was just about to finish on that one there. So just because you might make a decision to not be competitive as a bodybuilder, the art of bodybuilding is just simply improving your physique over time and going through the process of physique development. That's not something that needs to stop just because you decide not to step on stage and go through to that extreme. But it doesn't mean you now just stop working on your goals and your own physical progress of what you're trying to achieve within your physique. That can still be done without having to step on stage.
And I think that should never stop for anyone.
Yeah, all right, guys. I think that was a good story time for us this week.
That was good. Never done an interview and sort of interviewed myself a little bit. It was good there. I enjoyed that. It was a good little chat team. But guys, this is the Real Talk podcast, guys. Thanks for listening or watching. Please like, comment, or share. It's the only way we can get this out and about. And we do appreciate the people who are doing it at the moment. If you do have any questions or queries, slide into our DMs. Talking about business, a few things have changed. My Instagram handle is now Pocket PT Pro, and we have George, who is FlexCoach_George.
So
hey, it's only taken 8 episodes. Guys, this is the Real Talk. Keep it real. Until next time, peace.